I'm Elise Winters, and I'm a Suzuki violin teacher in Austin, Texas. And in this video, I want to talk to you about two problems that we run into with our beginners, which are pancake hand and a grabby left thumb, and how to eliminate both of those. So I used to think that pancake hand was a result of students supporting the violin with their left hand. It makes sense. Until I started doing a series of movement building blocks with my young beginners, and one of those movement building blocks is having them simply line up their hand with their arm. And what was consistently happening is that they would be in this slightly bent position, and I would say, okay, line up your hand, and they would look at me like, okay, I did that, now what? And that was confusing because I'm looking at their hand and it's clearly angled, and they're looking at their hand and they clearly think it's straight. So put your hand in this angle, kind of slightly bent, and look at it from the front, and what you'll discover is that your fingertips and your thumb at this angle are lined up with the front of your forearm. And those are the parts that they're aware of because they're the parts that are closest to their eyes, and they're not aware of the back of their hand, and they're not aware of the back of their arm. So to build this awareness, especially in a young player, what I'll do, usually I'll move them into the correct position, and then I'll have them take their other hand and feel the flat surface back here, and that there's no bend as you go from the hand to the forearm. And we'll kind of practice going into that position a few times, experiment with going from the wrong way to the right way. And then I have a song that I use to have them practice it at home. And again, we're practicing both the wrong way and the right way because I want to build that distinction between the two so that they're really learning to discriminate them. And the song is a little folk song. It's called All Around the Buttercup, and it goes like this. All around the buttercup, 1, 2, 3. If you want a bonny lass, just choose me. All around the clover white, 1, 2, 3. If you want a bonny lad, just choose me. Now, when they actually get on the violin, that's a whole other ball of wax for two reasons. One is that on the violin, the body of the instrument is actually blocking their view of almost everything that they would need to see to correct their wrist. The only thing I can see is kind of a little square of the top right edge of my hand. And then the other thing is, of course, they want to get their fingers right, and that's the most important thing to them. And we really would like for them to get their wrist right, but for them, that's much more abstract. So the strategy that I use to ensure a successful transition is I'll have the parent be the one to pluck or bow. So the parent is now in charge of the noise making, and the parent simply won't begin the song until they check and make sure that that wrist is lined up. So the parent kind of serves as the gatekeeper. The other thing that I do with my young beginners that really ensures a correct wrist position is that I start them in third position. And I won't go into that too much here, I'll save that for the next video. But in third position, the edge of the violin is right here, so that it's really impossible for them to collapse their wrist. And also, with the arm at this more acute angle, the hand is really balanced very nicely on top of the arm, whereas when you come back here, with that larger angle, the hand is no longer balanced. It's really behind the arm and it wants to sag a little bit. So this is really nice. And the amazing side benefit of starting in third position is that it's a closer center of gravity, so it makes the violin effectively about 50% lighter, and it makes their arm 50% lighter. So you don't get as much fatigue, you don't get as much sagging. It's really much more fun for them. It's easier for the parents because the parents don't have to nag as much about keeping the violin lifted. You don't have to nag as much, so it's really a win for everyone. So let's talk now about the grabby thumb. And of course, the reason that the left thumb grabs is because they're looking to get that sense of security holding the violin. And they're not really clear where the support comes from. So where does the support come from? Well, mostly the violin is just resting on the knuckle bone of the index finger of the left hand, and even without my thumb on, I can raise and lower the violin just resting on that little tiny ledge of a knuckle bone. And then the thumb exerts just a tiny bit of lateral pressure this way so that it keeps that neck kind of snug into the knuckle bone. So that's great, but for a young beginner, that's really abstract. And even for an older beginner, it's not that intuitive. So when we say don't grab, it's sort of like telling someone who's never stepped in a canoe before, hey, just step into the canoe and don't worry, it won't tip. It's really hard for them to trust that. So after 20 years of teaching, here's the solution that I found for a perfect left hand. I have them make a V for violin with their left hand and then close that V so that it's now a lowercase v. That's important because if they do a larger V, their hand is going to end up being too high and they're going to get this funky angle with their first finger. So I want them to have a lowercase v, put it back behind where their first finger goes. Now when they close that first finger, it's going to be a nice kind of tabletop angle here, and their thumb is already in a really nice neutral curve on the other side. Now, of course, in reality, I want there to be a space in between the thumb and the hand. The funny thing is that because they feel so secure with this sense of the V supporting the violin underneath, it's a really intuitively secure position for them, imagining that V under there. Because they feel secure, they actually squeeze less than they did before, and the V naturally opens up as they play. The thumb just releases because there's no need for it to be pressing. So even though I've told them to start with the thumb in this position, they actually have it open much more consistently than my students did before when I was asking them to keep it open. So I hope that these ideas are helpful for you in teaching your beginning students. In the next video, I want to talk about how I use movable do solfege to establish note reading ability from the beginning so that by the time students are playing fluently on the violin, they're also fluent note readers. So make sure to register to the right of this so that you get a notice when that video is released. And also please make sure to leave a comment on the forum where you originally saw this video so that other teachers can benefit from it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.